Hey. Okay, I'm host. All right, Jeff, you are good to go.
All right. We will call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. And first order of business is recognition of visitors. I think you've got everybody down, Cindy.
I hope so.
You can pop up your participant list and kind of go down through it if you need
I
to.
am. I just let a Matt in, but I'm not sure if it's our Matt or.
All right. Approval of agenda.
I'd like to add one item to the agenda, Jeff.
Okay, Jim.
BAE.
Yep.
Snow Trails and Conservancy need to vote on adding a new trustee.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just when you thought you were done with these things.
I know. That's why I didn't put it on the agenda. No, I forgot about it actually.
Is there anything else to add to the agenda? Hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Addison County approves
Thank you, Louis.
the agenda.
Grand Isle will second.
I have Addison and Grand Isle. Thank you, Jeff. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Say aye with some sort of indication.
Aye.
With 28 people on the Zoom, it's kind of hard to keep track of two screens. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Secretary's report. I believe that was in your packet of information that went either by mail or through the Dropbox. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the secretary's report.
Windsor County makes a motion to approve the Secretary's report as presented.
I have Windsor for first and
Grand Isle will second.
okay, Grand Isle, thank you. Any discussion, any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Treasurer's report, Patty.
Okay, mine's gonna be a little different tonight. So Cindy, wanna?
Yeah, here's my question. Are you going to be able to share your screen? I didn't think of this till right now and let people in. I'm wondering if I can make you. I'm going to try something different. I want to try that share screen. Share screen.
You should be able to give her permission to share her screen and not be host.
I'm looking.
I believe that's a
It says it's
possibility.
disabled. Yeah. It says host disabled participant screen sharing, so I don't have it as an option.
Host allow to record, allow multi-pin. Just made you co-host. Try to share your screen now.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
There we go.
See if I can move this. Okay. Can you all see that? Cindy, I know you know what it is, so we good?
Yeah,
Awesome.
it looks good, Patty.
Okay, so first I want to say thank you to everybody for their support at the annual meeting. I appreciate your support, and I'll do my best to fulfill the VAST Treasurer's role this year again for you. So starting off with, I created an annual, which I hope will be an annual enhanced treasurer's report. I know you guys all get the financial package, in the Dropbox or either by mail, and there's a lot of moving parts in that. So I do try to summarize that every month. But this, I'm going to do the regular report this tonight, and I'm going to do some enhancements, some of the things that were major changes in our operation that impacted financials. Okay, and my hope is that that this high level summary, and it's only a few specific areas that had the most impacts I'm going to cover, will allow the current directors to share this information with their clubs, and for new directors, it's just going to be a great a history of some of the things that have impacted us financially that have changed during the course of the change business. So I'm going to ask you to hold your questions to the end, because I'm hoping that as I go through this, that the next slide or 2 slides down will answer your questions, but we will open it up for questions at the end. Okay, and my presentation will go to everybody, and Cindy also made a suggestion that Mandy post it to the VAST website, so if any members want to see it as well, it'll be available there. Okay, so this is what I'm going to cover, my normal financial highlights, the membership, income, and expenses, and then I'm going to talk about the fiscal year end, since this report is September's data, which is the last month of our fiscal year. And it's going to have some year-over-year comparisons, and we're going to highlight, again, some very specific areas: the grooming, our GPS, signs, the encumbered accounts, because we've talked a lot about that with the flood damage, and operating and office supplies, and just a high-level expense summary. So this is just my normal membership stuff, that our membership income reflects a decline, or it's really more of a back to pre-COVID normal, if you want to look at it that way. When I pull up the year-over-year comparisons, right here you can see just in the bullets, 2020 we were about 2.5, and I'm going to round off, but you can see the numbers. 2021, that's when we were in full COVID mode. We jumped up to 2.8 because there wasn't a lot of things to do other than outside sports. 2022, we dropped down to 2.7. That's when things started opening up. And this past year, we finished the year at 2.4. 2023 membership is about 326,000 short of what our budget expectations were. Now, with the $10 TMA increase for the 2024 season, just as an FYI to you guys, you'll see this in the different reports. Moving on as we get sales, a new account's been created, and it's called the Trails Special Reserve Account, located in the management report. And then there's 2 account codes for those TMAs. One is the income, and one will be the expense, and those are the codes for them if you wanted to look them up as we sell TMAs and move through the season. So these are the membership charts. I just put underneath it the financial for 2020. I did it. I was trying to move something, and that doesn't work when you have your thing in share mode like this. Okay, so 2021, again, you can see the charts there, the 87%, 80%, 78% of our budget expectations. This is strictly on the membership for the season. Did I go too far? Yes, I did. I am so sorry. There we go. Okay, I'm sorry. So there's the grid on the bottom, just the normal stuff I sent you, and you can see in 2023 the negative of 326K. Does everybody? Okay. So income reflects in the September numbers, the $750 grant money from the state for the flood repairs is actually in the income statement that it reports that you guys received this month from Sheila's through either the Dropbox or the mail. So if we add that in as in the report, our budget income expectations are at 113%. But if we take that 750 out, our budget expectations for income is at 91%, a little shortfall of about 309. And again, overall, our income does reflect a slight decline of 3.3, then 3.2, and then 3.1. And you can see that. This is where you'll see it in the income line item. There's the account number, flood relief trail work, and that's the grant money, and it's in your income statement that you get on the report, so you can see where that money came in. Okay, and these are the charts, and again, on the top, it shows where the 750 is included, and that brings us up to about 113% of income expectations. When I remove the 750, it puts us at about 91%. And the same thing with the graphs below. Okay. Expenses. As of September 2023, there was $80K in monthly activity, and about $25K of it was the Green Mountain National Forest grant income, and $20K of that also went out in expenses. So with that grant money, that grant line item, things come in and things go out usually within that same reporting, and about $41K in salaries and benefits. So that was the activity, the primary activity for the month of September. 2023 was about $653K was not utilized in the expense budget. And some of the savings was a little $33K less in operating and office supplies and $596K less in trail expenses, specifically grooming. Expense budget increased in 2023 primarily due to changes in the grooming policy for clubs. We had about a $200K increase in the grooming line item, and that did not include the dollar fuel charge that we also added in this past year, but I will cover that a little bit further. So there's a new expense line item that's going to be added to Trails Fund Budget report in 2024, and expenses start coming in for those floods will be that specific account number. I'm going to admit Julianne. So I got one, Sim. And then, so that's the account number, and that's what it's going to be called. So as people start putting their submitting their expenses for those projects that were approved by Matt, and Matt starts submitting them for payment, that's where you're going to see those expenses hit. And the flooding projects, again, will be paid against that particular line item, and that's the account number. And you guys all see those account numbers in the report you get. I'm just summarizing it, hopefully to make it easier. So you can see year over year between 21, 22, and 23, where our expense budgets was and where we landed for the final year, and then the charts below. Okay, so this is where I get into a little extra. So that would have been my normal. And the next couple of slides are just a few extra items I'm going to cover with you again for history and for the new directors, maybe an opportunity for you guys to have that information available. I'm just going to see if I can move this over. Okay. All right. Fiscal year end, year over year comparison. Grooming budget, grooming expense budget line item increased in 2023 by 200K compared to the prior season. 2023 was more in line actually with our grooming funding utilization. So we pretty much were in a line, and you'll see that in the charts with what we groomed in 2023 and paid out with 2021. 2023 season, 100K was reserved for fuel expenses due to the high cost, and that motion was made at the annual meeting. An additional $1 per groom mile was paid to clubs this past season, and that value came to $78,000. All startup payments, again, this past year through the policy change, and everybody gets that 35% of the grooming contract, and the rates also increased. So those are the classifications right out of the policy. This is like really hard with this. There we go. In 2022, we only used 34% of our grooming expense budget, and we had minimal snow that year. In 2024, the grooming budget line item is slightly less than 2023 by about 132K. I'm going to show you the charts in a second here. So I just want to show you what we paid this past season in grooming. So grooming payments for the season was 1.1. We add in the additional $1 per mile groom mile. So that was another 78. So total pay for grooming in 2023 was 1.2. And there's the comparison charts below. And again, that 1.1 does not include the $1 per mile in the chart flow. Okay, so now we're going to get in, that was grooming. So now this is GPS units, just to give you an idea, because this is a pretty, popular thing now that, our standard thing now within our program. Matt's report last month, those are the bullets. It was literally a copy paste out of his report for last month that he shared with you guys, that we're going to be going to a new system. So the new GPS system line item reflects 65K in changes for this coming year, the 2024 budget. Now, if you look at the GPS and then the bottom chart shows you strictly the GPS line item and the expenses year over year. The original GPS system was a 4-year rollout phase. Remember, Matt was making appointments with you guys to put those GPS units in. So it took some time. So the expenses were spread out over a 4-year period. For the 2024 season, all units will be leased, and it's not going to be a phased rollout. You're all going to get them this year, and you're all going to be utilizing them through this lease program that Matt has also has in his report tonight. GPS expense expectations, Matt's saying he thinks it's going to be more like 40K, less than the 65K that's budgeted, and those are the other line items within that budget line that the expenses will go against. And I will tell you, for October, I just approved today the leasing, so I know some of that stuff's already happening. Signs. So signs over the past 4 years, this is strictly just a sign page here. We've averaged about 43,000 in signage expenses. The budget has increased over the past 4 years as well, from like 32K back in 2020 to about 50K. So, and it's consistent in the last 3 years with the 50K mark. Budget represents the gross cost. So VAST and the clubs actually pay into this expense line. So you guys get a portion of some signs that you actually pay for at the club level. Cost of clubs changes based on VAST paying a higher percentage of the cost for specific signs. And there are some signs that VAST also pays everything. There's no cost to clubs. But you can see what the line item is and what we've actually spent each year and the percentage there, just to give you an idea. Now we get into these encumbered, and I struggle with this encumbered. Now, this is my 4th year doing the treasury thing, and I still have to pause for a moment. But there are three, as of 2023, 3 encumbered accounts. And I actually put the definition of what it was there, in case you don't know what that is. In accounting, it refers to funds that are set aside for future expenses, okay? So 450K is moved to the Trails Encumbered Fund to support the upcoming season's projects. So I wish I could move this, but I can't move this line. Okay. So if we do that, we're doing that this year, the 450K, $5 per TMA for trail grants started in 2019. And that also moves into this encumbered account. So for projects, and for 2024, we're moving 104K into there. Okay. And then the $1 per sold for the Trails Conservancy, we put $1 per TMA into that account if we meet or exceed our financial expectations, our income, but we didn't this year, so no funding will move there. But that encumbered account does exist. The line items shaded in blue below actually show you what the expense line items were and where Matt allocated that money for 21, 22, and 23. So I put them in, there's trail construction, there's trail maintenance, trails emergency fund, trails debrushing, and he has a next year trail projects, which he didn't allocate any dollars in that particular area. But you can see where that allocated money that's carried over is actually being spent with those 4 breakdown accounts. Okay, so I wanted to talk about operating and office supplies because there were some business changes that actually really impacted this particular line item in this area as well. So operating and office supplies is a header, and it includes a lot of different items within that bucket, or several buckets within that line item. It could be anywhere from your taxes, your trash, your maintenance, your computers, your contracts on your office equipment, electricity, all that kind of stuff. There's also an online credit card TMA fees line item in there. Okay. And you can see in 2020, there was only 13, almost 14,000. And then 2021, it was a huge jump to 108K. 2022, 105K. And this year, a little less, 93K. And there's a reason for that. Which I am going to talk about. Office supplies, when you talk about operating and office supplies, so I went right down into the office supply area. It includes supplies for the office, but it also includes copying software, postage, and a variety of other things, including membership forms and decals. Now, 2020 was about 24K for those decals, right? 2021, it was only 6,500. Remember, that was a year we didn't get them. We got those temporary ones, right? And 2022 was about 28K, and 2023, 24K. So pretty consistent on what we're spending on those decals. 2021 season, all TMAs were sold via the online option. And you can see the numbers change except for the decals. Well, we didn't do any because that year everything happened with the COVID and everything going on. But that's the year, thank goodness, we went online because of COVID. There's a $5 processing fee that covers a portion of TMA credit card fees and TMA postage as well, but it doesn't cover the whole cost of what we're spending on that stuff. But you can see there in 2021, the credit card fees went way up. So you're talking 100K more in that particular budget, and it's due to the fact that we went online TMAs. So I just went into office supplies, just really looking, what are the supplies, right? Because we keep throwing that word around because it's in the header. I'm going to let Roger in. There we go. Line item, it's actually decreased over the past couple of years. So when you're talking about office supplies, 2020, about 11, almost 12K, 21, 11K again, pretty consistent with 2020. 2022, we dropped down 8,400, and 2023 around 7,000. So again, the increase in the operating and office supply budget coincides with the online TMAs, the credit card fees, which are averaging about 100K. So if you look at the chart, what we put in the budget each year and what we actually use, you can see the big jump from 2020 through 2023 to primarily, again, to the credit card fees. Okay. All right. And just to end my thing, I kind of went through, I don't have anything on SSTP because I'm not the treasurer for SSTP. It's a separate entity, but it does play a part in part of our budget. We do get that grant line item, things that come in and things that are expensed out. One of the things I know everybody talks about is equipment. So for 2024, the money that we have from SSTP for equipment is $248,000. Okay. And you also have that in your packet from Matt. There is the SST budget in there. The 2023 season summary of expenses. So this again encompasses what I just covered in these prior slides. The Trails Fund expenses, the actual is 1.3. The Trails encumbered is a 450. The $5 TMA that started in 2019, it's 104. The dollar fuel was in 78. And then the season's actual final numbers for the SSTP, which again is supplementing our budget. Where the other stuff is TMA, this is all coming from the government stuff, taxes and registrations and things. The SST Trails programs that they gave us, if you want to look at it that way, almost 270K. The law enforcement, including equipment, was 79K. And equipment grants for this past season was only 145K. So when you add all those things up for expenses on the trail side, it's 2.4. So I carried that over on the right-hand side in that shorter chart. You can see it's 2.4 where the general fund is $1 million. So total expenses was 34. Whoops. Trying to move this thing again so I can get over there. And you can see the difference in percentages. We're spending 71% on our trails and 29% in general funds. That's what I have. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that helps people. Again, when you get this, if you want to go through it on your own and you have questions after the fact, please don't hesitate to let me know. Give me a ring or send me an email. I'm going to stop sharing, Sin.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then you should be able to take it back. Okay, so that's my treasurer's report this month.
Okay. Thank you, Patty.
Patty?
Need a motion.
I'm sure there's questions on that.
Need a motion before questions.
Yeah, I know that. I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do here. So I will entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented.
Washington County will make a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented.
Thank you, Jeff. And a
Lemoyle
second.
will second it. Lemoyle.
Thank you, Dustin. All right. Now we'll open it to questions.
I know it's a lot, but I thought it was valuable for people to see where the money's going and why things changed. So you could share that with your clubs. And for those who are new to this, just giving you that information in a PowerPoint or that history should be helpful to you too. I will give it to Mandy and she'll put it, we'll send it out, right, Send, and We'll put it on the VAST website as a link, so you can also have your clubs access it on their own if they want to, or members and things like that. So I hope it was helpful. I thought it was an education for me to see where some of that and what business changes occurred to cause those things to go up. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Patty.
Patty. I think you did a great job. And if people have questions too, specific questions, you can get to Patty, or you can send them to me and I'll share them with Patty and we'll get back to you.
Okay. Not hearing any questions, not seeing hands going up. I guess we will.
I just wanted to say, again, chime in and say, Patty, I think that was a great job, and it really does put it in perspective and show where the money goes. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Mark.
Yes, great job, Patty. It makes it very easy to understand.
Hey, Jeff, I have one question for Patty. Also, job well done. What was the total surplus or deficit for fiscal year?
This past year, and I don't have that with me, but what's it, Cindy? Do you have that number? I do have that report. I have all my reports here. I should have looked that up because I know we have to divvy that up, and I forgot about that piece of it. We usually do that at the annual meeting, don't we, Cindy?
Yeah, it's in the annual report.
I could let me run the numbers here and do my little math, and I will put it in chat. Is that okay, Bruce?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay.
As I recall, there was a surplus. Don't believe we were in a deficit.
It was because of grooming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned about, oh yeah, I did cover that. On one of the slides where we're finishing our year, and it was 500,000 in grooming and 30-something thousand in operating, I believe, right? And I'll tell you what slide that is.
Actually, it should be right on your.
My expenses. I just got to go to its income.
Should be right in the
about
handout, actually.
600. I have 653K was not utilized in the expense report. And overall, that's one number I had. And 33K was about less in operating and office supplies, and 596K in trails expenses, which is primarily grooming. So around 650K, Bruce, is what I have.
Any other quick questions for Patty? Okay, I will ask those in favor of the treasurer's report to say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay, please. Thank you.
Jeff, Christine Stewart, or I'm assuming it's not Christine Stewart, it's Michael Stewart.
It's Mike Stewart. Mike, do you have your
How's it
hand
going?
up, or are you just saying aye to passing it?
That was an aye.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, everybody.
Let's see, no table items, no old business, new business. Item 8A, Mad River Ridge Runners. Mr. Wilson, thank you for joining us.
You're on, Doug.
I'm on. All right. Sorry about that.
You're on. There you go.
Okay. So the reason that I'm here is we were one of the two clubs that applied for the, I'll call it the 750K money for an equipment grant. And kind of to give you a little history here on, that we're a 60-mile club and with an older piece of equipment over 15 years. So we met the criteria. Knowing that this money was coming up for pretty much a year. I think in last July, you guys first started talking about it, and then it got approved with the state budget. So it's been out there that we've known about. So we put in a grant for basically a $250,000 piece of equipment. And with that, we would have maxed out on the grant dollar. So we would have received 126,000 on the grant. And we had a trade of like 55,000. So basically, when it was all said and done, our club would have had to put out about 69,000 for a piece of equipment. Since that monies didn't get used for that and I'll come back to the time frames, didn't get used for that, what happens is that if we did the exact same thing next year, and you count on the fact that the equipment grant goes up 5.5%, but the extra money goes away, and our trade drops like $10,000. We got to put about $2,800 into our machine. So basically, and the new stuff goes up. So we end up with a cost to the club, instead of being 69,000. We'd end up at 132,000. So it's really a net difference of just about $64,000. So it's a substantial amount, and it would prevent us from getting to that a newish machine with warranty. So then if I go back and look, I know there was a lot back and forth with the AOT on how they were doing the money and that whole thing. And in the May meeting, Cindy indicated that she had spoken with them and was sending out an email that went out to the board. And in that email, basically the AOT did come back and say that, they knew they were really late doing it, but if you had any clubs you wanted to do it with this time around, you could, using the, I forget how they word, the original legislative language or something along that line. And then you could do a special grant round for later. So that happened in May. The June was the deadline for equipment grants. We submitted along with Woodford. We were the only two clubs that did submit for the 750 money. And the board, it never came up in the June meeting. Nothing was done with that. Then the flood happened, and in July, the money was turned to go for flood damage, or asked if it could go to flood damage. However, you put in the motion that if it didn't go for flood damage, it would go back for the two clubs that did apply. And our contention is that, had it been acted upon in June, which is the deadline for grants, I don't know why it was skipped over. That was all prior to the flood, and we would have been a candidate that matched the criteria. So what we're asking for is that a guarantee for next season of that 126,000 that we would have hit upon. That way, that would allow us time. If we have a guarantee in writing, we have time now between now and then to either find something this season and figure a way of getting a vendor to hold it over or whatever. And hopefully we could do something prior to having to invest in our machine and then lose more money off of our machine. So that's kind of that's where we are on this.
I'll add that it wasn't skipped over in June. The board decided at the June meeting to table it or to wait until the July leadership retreat to talk about it, because even though the state had told us that we could go and do what had come through the original language, that the board decided that we wanted more time to work on it. So it was a discussion in June. And
there's nothing in the June.
Wait, let me just answer one more question and then I'll stop. And then the other point is that it was added to the grant request because the board felt that even though the program had not been worked out fully by us and agreed upon with the state, that we would add a line item in the equipment, the usual equipment grant, to just say, would you need this equipment? So we could figure out what clubs actually do need equipment that would fall into that range. I think that was our mistake, rather than, because maybe it confused people to think that they were in the regular grant cycle and that it was going to be approved, but it was really just to find out what clubs were out there that fell into those weird requirements that we'd gotten from the state. So I think we could have done a few things differently, but it wasn't just skipped over, and it wasn't trying to lead you guys into thinking that you were going to get it until VAST and the board and the state had worked it out.
And there was also discussion at the July retreat about paying those 2 grants before we asked the state to convert the money to flood damage. And it was a board decision not to go that route, that we would ask to have the whole 750 converted to flood damage repair.
The minutes of the June meeting don't show that there was discussion in regards to tabling it to the July meeting.
Minutes are only legally, they only have to be for motions, but there was a recording and it's on our website of all of our board meetings.
Okay.
There was a discussion, but there was no motion made to table it or anything. So that's probably why it didn't show up in the minutes stuff.
Because the way this was set out, we were told to apply, to make sure that we had our application in for that June deadline. And then none of them were looked at, and it affected both Woodford and us. And both of us had machines that are over 6,000 hours. We average 10,000 a year in repairs. So it certainly costs us to wait. And that's, and that program, which was designed to replace older worn out stuff, isn't there anymore because of the way it was used up. And we feel that it was there when we applied.
If I might just add for a second, I know all of you guys heard me out over the July meeting down at the July weekend. And you know where I stand on this. We tried really hard to come together to make it work. We felt like it would be a lot of us felt like it would be kind of irresponsible at that point, looking down the barrel after the storm. And at that point, we really didn't know the totals that we know now, as far as what we would have had for trail damage. I for one felt like we should have possibly paid this out and then used the rest of the money. But a lot of us felt, and I hope I'm not speaking poorly, a lot of us felt like it might look irresponsible returning back to the state to spend the portion of it and to then ask to revert the rest of the money. I personally felt that that's the way it should have gone, as far as and again, I would even probably recuse myself from the vote, Doug, anyways, because of being a member of the club. I know that there was some other members that felt that way, but we just couldn't pull it together as far as an overriding vote to pay that out and then ask Cindy to go to the state with the remainder. There was definitely some things that I think we should have done better as the board of directors. I felt like we probably should have, and I don't necessarily remember talking about it in the June meeting, but my memory's not that great. I felt like we should have had that money ready for Matt. I felt like we kind of let Matt down, not having the okay for him to utilize that money in July when he normally would use that for grant processing. And I felt like that's probably a ball that we missed as VAST. I don't know what we would have saved by tabling it till the July meeting, other than just to talk about it some more. But at that point, I think we've talked about it for almost a year. So those are my feelings on it. I guess at this point, it's just, I think what Doug's asking is if there's anything that the board of directors could come up with to help them possibly look towards a new machine and help them with some of the shortfalls that'll be caused by this.
This Patty, I just want to make sure everybody remembers, I just covered in the prior budget stuff that I went over, there's only 248K allocated for all equipment next year before you guys get into what you want to do or not do. But that's for everybody. So that's all the pot is going into this season.
Well, obviously that 750 was a unexpected windfall, directly from the state. And, yeah, we probably, in hindsight, we could have done a few things different, but in hindsight, we would have predicted the floods and made other arrangements too, right? So, I understand what Doug's asking for. I guess as a board, you guys need to decide whether that is a request that you would like to consider. I don't know, as Patty pointed out, that's like half of what we have budgeted for all equipment grants next year, or will be budgeted for next year. So I will leave it up to the board to decide what they'd like to do.
Matt has his hand up.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I understand, where the two clubs are coming from. It's definitely tough, but I just want to remind everyone, even with that 750, we still have a number of trails that are not going to be open this winter or probably for a few winters at this point. A lot of those are in Washington County, some in Windsor. And without the 750, we wouldn't have done nearly what we've been able to do. And if we, as Patty noted, this is no offense to Doug or any of the clubs, but if we start looking ahead and guaranteeing stuff like this, we're setting ourselves up for a very slippery slope in the future. And it is most of the grant money. So you're basically going to screw other clubs out of funding if we do something like this now. I'm completely against it. And, it would really tie my hands next year, essentially is what it would do. So that's my opinion on it, thinking outside the box. And like I said, I understand this is a hardship for the clubs that would have qualified for sure. And it makes it tougher for them. I don't disagree with that, but it was either buy new equipment and have no trails to groom, or we fix our trails and run the equipment we have. That's the way I saw it at the retreat. And it sort of made sense to do what we did, I think. So I didn't really feel let down by it, but.
Again, my point was that, I feel that this should have happened in June because you had a response back from AOT on it, and it would have qualified and could have happened then. And from what was said in July, if they hadn't let you move the 750, yeah, you would have funded the clubs. So it wasn't like there was not need there. So that's really where I go there. The other thing I will say is that our program will fail if we don't find ways to fund equipment, because there's no way that this old stuff can keep running. And at $250,000, you're not going to get there. It's a huge problem.
And it's been one of the problems that we faced for the last 15 years. As prices of equipment keep going up and prices of repairs keep going up. And we're still the highest priced trail pass in the upper three north. Actually, we are in the Northeast. We are the highest one. So go ahead, Patty.
I was going to say, this past year, the $10 increase went, the way I understood it was going to trails, right? And this year, I think it was aligned with construction, but it doesn't mean, and I know this was something Bruce was pretty passionate about, it could be every year reallocated to something else. Maybe the following year, it could be equipment that's moved into or something like that. I think the $10 we put in that trails arena so we could move it around, but this year it's allocated to construction. I think is how it was done, correct?
No, I think we said trails because we kind of encompass equipment
Right.
and trails together. So it was sort of like, let's look and see what the need is in the spring. When equipment grants and all that stuff is coming in too. But the reality is that if we hadn't spent that money, like we're probably going to end up spending $200,000 to $300,000 more than the $750 to fix what we can. And then we've got still a bunch of bridges that are out, and trails that are out that won't, and the other thing is it's very hard to guarantee, because basically, like Matt said, you're tying his hands if we do this, because he spends a lot of time prioritizing equipment grants because of the small amount of funding that we have. And so he looks at everything, not just the age and the hours. Of course, those are huge factors in it. But there's a lot of it. So I would not recommend guaranteeing that you're going to give these two clubs grants ahead of anyone else. I don't know. And Matt is the one that does the grants, and he and I have talked about this. If it was just a regular grant period and everyone else that was applying also fell into, like, let's take that criteria that the state had, would these two clubs have been at the top of the priority list this year if we would have had that funding? And for them, and they were in the same cycle that everyone else was. So I think that's another thing to consider.
Doug Jacobs?
Yeah, Jeff, I was just wondering, I know Cindy worked real hard to get this $750 for the equipment grants and everything, and then we switched it over to the trails, which, obviously we had to. Is there any way, Cindy, in your opinion, that we could try to apply for a little bit more money from the state? Like even a couple $100,000 for these pieces of equipment due to this issue that happened? Or don't you think that would be even possible or feasible?
Doug, it's a good question. I actually have a meeting with the governor's office tomorrow, but it's not about equipment. It's about trails. They want an update on what's going on since the floods with our trail system and stuff like that, and funding. If some of you who don't live in Vermont maybe haven't seen the news, but they're really calling for all of the state agencies to cut back on their budgets this year. They're also probably going to put a freeze on hiring. So there's a limited amount of funds. And just to remind everyone, this $750,000 was only there because of COVID. It was part of the federal relief. I just went in there knowing that there was money on the table, and I went in there and tried to get some for us. So it's going to be pretty rare that we would have that opportunity, even for $200,000, Doug, that they wouldn't want to allocate towards trails and bridges and infrastructure.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or discussions?
I just, Jeff, I couldn't figure out how to put my hand up. I just want to ask, is there any way we can, when it comes to next year's grant cycle, give these guys a couple of extra points? And I know I don't want to tie Matt's hand, but I empathize with the clubs in question, and I know what Doug's saying. Is there any way, without tying your hands, Matt, that we could say, okay, these guys start off with 5 points instead of 0 when that gives them a little extra boost? And again, we don't know what this winter is going to bring with equipment breakdowns or whatnot. The numbers will change, of course, for both of these clubs on the groomers they may be looking at and their trade-ins. But is there anything we can do to sort of mitigate this somewhat?
I really think that's not possible, Mark. I mean, really, because there's so many, because then you're putting them ahead of everyone else, and there are clubs out there that are desperate. And the other thing too is the financial viability of each club that applies for grants. There needs to be, there's so much that goes into it. I think if you wanted to table this, I know what Doug is saying, that they want to start shopping now, or whatever, if they had some sort of guarantee. But we don't even know what the winter's going to bring. I think if anything, you might just want to put off this discussion until spring. And I know that's putting it off again, but
No, and I understood that, and that's why I said, is there any way we could, within the rules of the next cycle, depending on what's going on, not to completely make, fix it, but to somewhat help mitigate it. And I completely understand. That's why I asked the question, because I want to make sure we look at all avenues that we can.
Cindy, if I might, I know you have your meeting is kind of pinpointed tomorrow with the state, but is there more, when would we ask for money from the state properly to have more budgeted money come to VAST? What time of the year would that be? Is that coming up, or is that gone past for this year, or?
I meet with them every year this time of year. This is when they're putting their budgets together.
So if I may, and I don't think it takes a motion to do so, could we ask you to bring this forward to them from the board to ask them, because of the shortfalls and because of what we did with the storm, if they could look at just asking? I mean, it's a long shot. It's a Hail Mary, but throwing it out there that we did have 2 clubs that were eligible. Both of their machines are in need of, major repair at this point. And it does strike up some more hardship for next year with their numbers moving up and down on both ends, to make sure that this is asked, and that we'll see what they say.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to bring it up anyway, because they're going to be asking for our financial viability and what we have and all that. I think the thing is, when you talk about financial viability, it's not just the money that we have in the bank. It's the winter that we're going to have coming up. Mm-hmm. It's the idea that we have a gross amount of power units in this state to maintain. And that's a discussion that this board has been having ever since I've been at VAST. And I'm not saying that Doug's club is one of those. They have 60 miles of trail, but there's a heck of a lot of clubs in this state that have 20, 25 miles of trail. And there's a lot of machines out there that need to be repaired. And we're going to keep having these discussions. But yeah, I do plan on telling them, giving them the whole overall picture of what happened this past year. And it will include, the process that we took with AOT, and then the flood and all that. So I'll report back to the board.
The 2 payouts, I believe, were no more than like $187,000, I believe, if we were to pay out on both.
Well, and just so you know the timeline, even if I have this discussion, which I am going to have with them tomorrow, and they decide to put money in the budget, then we still have to go to the legislature and fight for it. It's just like that $1 million I asked for, and we ended up with 750. Remember that at one point, the whole $1 million went away before the 750 got put back in. So it's all very tenuous. And then we don't even get the final results until May, when the session ends. So it's still putting the club off. It's still putting everybody, in limbo as far as where the extra funds will come from.
Understood.
Well, I think we've got everybody's thoughts and opinions on this. I think Cindy's got the right idea that we just kind of set it aside and pick it up a little bit farther down the street. And I think we all understand that the need is there to get some improved equipment on the trails. We just got to figure out the best way to do it. I appreciate your time, Doug. I know it's not what you wanted to hear tonight, but I think we need to just let it sit for a bit and see what this winter brings, and see what we can address, a little bit farther as the new year comes around. Maybe Cindy will bring us a real Christmas present out of her meeting tomorrow. So
I always try.
I just wanted to say, well, thank you for considering it. Like I said, it will certainly affect what we're able to do next season, unfortunately, with the loss of that funding. And if there's a way to find that funding, that would certainly help.
Yeah, I know Matt does a good job of using what he has to get it out to as many clubs as possible. But having to convert that 750 really hurt to improve our equipment. So we will do what we can and see where it goes. But thank you, Doug. Appreciate your time. Next up, we have Burke Drift Skippers. And
I'm here. I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of this Board of Directors meeting this evening. My name is Kristen Delisle, and I've been the president of the Burke Drift Skippers for the past 4 years. Tonight, I'm here to speak out on behalf of our club and our club volunteers on a recent incident that we want our view and feelings on the record. During our 22-23 season, our 2000 BR was having major issues, and it was soon discovered that replacement parts were obsolete, and if they were available, they would be very expensive. It was inevitable that we had to look for a new to us machine. Our VP groomer, Travis Corser, over the course of last season, more than likely spent 80+ hours of his time searching for parts, trying to make repairs with the parts that we had accessible. We are a small club in the hub of the NEK, and we are cognizant of the significance of timely repairs and keeping the trails groomed for members of VAST, not just our club. Trust me, if we skip a beat, we sure do hear about it. Social media is not kind when you are in a bind. We applied for the VAST equipment grant with the purchase in mind of the Orleans Snowstormers Husky, and we were awarded $19,250 to purchase this machine. At this time, we were told we were not locked into this machine, but the grant amount was set. In July, we held a special meeting to discuss the purchase of the Prenoth Husky, as well as the possible purchase of a 2006 Tucker from Track Inc. The pros and cons were discussed, and in great length, and the unanimous vote to purchase the Tucker from Track Inc. was made. When VAST was sent our decision to purchase a different groomer than originally planned, the entire VAST equipment grant for our club took a not so favorable turn. We received a delayed message from Matt and his response to our new purchase decision, and we were told that the VAST policy was reviewed to see if there was any way our grant could be denied based on our new machine purchase. The Trails Administrator, Matt Tatro, has had multiple conversations with club member grant writer Jim, as well as our vice president and groomer Travis, on our request to purchase this Tucker. It is VAST's position that we will not be happy in 2 years with this purchase, and we will experience more maintenance on this machine than we could ever have imagined. There will be a lien on our machine, which we are totally understand and are aware of, but we were specifically told we will be denied any future VAST funding on this machine for any capital repairs, despite this not being VAST's current policy. The brazen abandonment of a small club preceding a formal policy change based on permitted behaviors of other clubs and equipment manufacturers is irresponsible. The feeling and emotions that have been shared with us over the past month due to our purchase from Track Inc. have not been well received. And it's a shame that given the fact that there seems to be a personal conflict with Matt Tatro and Track Inc., we are being caught in the middle of something that was started a long time ago. The professionalism that is conveyed in an email versus on the phone is very different. A volunteer should not be told they are like talking to a brick wall when speaking to them on the phone. This is not acceptable. We have been told that this particular piece of equipment has received a total of $30,000 in capital repairs from VAST in the past 2 years, as well as a total of 3 separate equipment grants for 3 clubs, ours included, towards the purchase of said machine totaling $126,000. If Matt and VAST had information on a specific piece of equipment that it felt had exceeded a ceiling of investment, that would have been good information to push out to clubs that were known to be looking at used equipment. In addition, if it is Matt's standpoint that he is not happy with how a specific reseller, equipment designer, manufacturers, cost is impacting the ongoing financial distributions, it should develop a policy and publish it proactively. All this information should have been given up front and be well known to the clubs. It shouldn't be told after time and money has been invested. Today, in reading through the equipment program policies, it states that priority order is A, equipment being replaced that is more than 20 years old. Our machine was 23 years old. Or B, documented record of serious mechanical failure that has caused repeated excessive downtime. We definitely qualify under A, and is the reason why Orleans was given a grant for a groomer when theirs was only 13 years old fall under the B category. We will never know. And this is the machine that we were being pressured into purchasing. This whole process doesn't make sense and feels as though new rules are made up as situations arise, which was kind of talked about tonight with Doug's situation. We look forward to Matt and VAST establishing guidelines on capital purchases going forward. Until then, we will continue to seek support and guidance in accordance with established policies and procedures and processes in place. Without VAST assistance, we are not sustainable as a club. And if VAST's end goal is to see small clubs fold, then eventually it will happen. I thank you for your time. And if anyone has questions or wants to reach out to discuss this matter, our email address is burkedriftskippers@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Do we want to get into discussion on this, or is this just for the record?
I mean, it's really just for the record. If anyone has any comments, we'd love to hear it.
I can add a few things.
Okay,
So
Cindy,
first
thank
off, and I'll let Matt talk. First off, the original grant that the Drift Skippers gave us, which I think Christine mentioned, was for a print off that the Orleans snowstormers own. When that grant was approved, it was for the print off. So he had no reason to talk to you guys about the Tucker because he didn't find out about the Tucker until months later, and you guys put a deposit down on it in July. When he found out what Tucker it has nothing to do with tracking or Matt not liking Tuckers. It's the history of this machine and how much trouble the two previous folks have had with that machine. And so that's where it all came down to. Now, as far as talking to a brick wall, you're right. That is not appropriate. But when you're on the phone with someone that is not absorbing what you're trying to tell them, sometimes it gets frustrating. And I think that's what my understanding was from the phone conversation. I'm not saying it's right. I had a guy call me last week, was screaming at me about TMAs. He was having a difficult time. And I finally said, sir, if you don't stop yelling at me, I'm going to hang up the phone. Because at some point as a human being, I've reached my limit. But that doesn't mean, and he immediately calmed down and apologized to me for yelling at me. But I do think, I think Matt was already in this process for a few weeks talking to Travis on the phone, and that's why he said that. But Matt, go ahead and talk about yourself. So I'll finish by saying, we have nothing against your club. We have nothing against Tucker. We've had issues from clubs that complain about different manufacturers and things like that, but it's not our role to tell a club that they shouldn't buy something because it's a certain brand. But if it's a machine that's a lemon, yeah, it's our job to say that machine's a lemon. You need to talk to the people that owned it before. And that's really what happened. And Matt was trying to put Travis in touch with Jesse Lambert, who was the last owner. Matt, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm sorry to Travis and everyone for becoming frustrated in that conversation. I certainly did. It was like 5 o'clock at night. I was trying to get to my son's soccer game and I had a long day and I was a little frustrated. And it just seemed like every time I'd say something, there was a different excuse thrown my way. And yeah, I became frustrated. So sorry for that. And I shouldn't have done it. And I'll take responsibility for that. But yeah, it's not necessarily a Tucker issue. It's this machine. It's got almost 9,000 hours on it. It's tired. The previous owner, these are verbatim from their equipment grant because they received a grant to replace that Tucker this year as well. The Tucker we own is too expensive to run. Repairs and maintenance costs are excessive. We have 3 major breakdowns a season. We've had to reach out to VAST to help pay for tracks this year, and now we have another track failing already. We feel we are being taken advantage of by Track Inc. Parts are incredibly inflated. Our Tucker, although it's 16 years old, already has over 9,000 hours on it, which it's like 8,700. It's just under that. But we need a newer machine or we won't be able to keep grooming. We just can't afford the breakdown cost any longer. So in Burke's application, it says they want a more reliable machine, something that doesn't break down, something with a known pedigree. And this is what was purchased. I was very surprised, and I was frustrated by that. I do try to talk to clubs about equipment, but I can't talk to every club about every piece of equipment. I'm one person dealing with a lot of stuff, and I just wish we could have communicated better on this before it was purchased. And you guys have made a decision. I respect that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm worried about this for you guys as a club, and was my genuine concern. I think, Kristen, I know since you and Brian stepped in, you've really rebuilt that club and done a good job. And I commend you for that. You've done a really good job. And I don't want to see this set you back to where it was either. So that was really where I was coming from. I was trying to do the right thing. I didn't in some of the things I did for sure, but the good intent was there, but could certainly do better.
Bruce, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want a couple of things I wanted to note is there is talk about future grants for repairs wouldn't be honored, wouldn't be considered. Is that still going to be a policy going forward on this machine? I mean, if they have the machine for 2 years, they don't have a problem. All of a sudden, 2.5 years in, there's a problem. They're looking for money. They're going to be told no. And then two other issues. We should have the policy changed that if you put in a grant for a power unit or a piece of equipment and you change what you put the grant in for, that grant should have to be reapproved. You shouldn't just get the money and go out and say, I'm just going to I'm going to buy a Ford, and you go out and buy a Chevy and you're totally changing the original purchase. There should be something where you've got to go back and get it reapproved. And also, there should be a list coming out for VAST every year of units and VIN numbers or on any piece of equipment that they will not fund any repairs going forward due to the unit's history. I mean, those two things you can change in a procedure, but I would like to get an answer on future grants if there is a repair issue needed on this groomer that Burke's purchasing in 3 years, 4 years from now.
It's not a policy, and I think it's based on need and what's wrong with the machine. So I think saying that in an email, I think he's more struggling with the fact that he might not be able to, rather than saying, no, we're not going to. Of course, it would still go into some sort of priority list situation. So I think it was just him being frustrated with the process, but the process is still the process. Anyone can apply for repairs. And this wasn't, just so everyone knows, Jesse Lambert chewed my ear off for about an hour and a half about this machine about 6 months ago. So it wasn't just Matt hearing about this machine. But you're right about the other, Bruce, Matt and I've talked about that too, as far as if you're applying for a certain machine and you can get approved and then you decide to switch machines, you need to reapply. It needs to, even if it's an amended application or whatever, because, I think that is the proper way of doing it anyway. It's just like you going to a bank and getting a loan, you can't switch in mid-gear. So
we also should put out that list of equipment. It could be drags, it could be power units or anything that, we know they have a history, and if you buy them, we're washing our hands. You're going to fund all the grants to repair.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, we can, now that Mandy's working part on trails too, that's a great project. to do. So we have some sort of annual like report on that, because Matt collects all that. Like we have every machine, every VIN number, all that kind of stuff. So it wouldn't be hard to, you know, we already have it all, like how old the machine is, how many years it's been in our system. You know, even if it doesn't list which clubs have owned it before, we could figure all that out. That'd be a good project for Mandy.
Unless they came to you for a capital repair grant, you wouldn't know how much money was put in those machines.
That's true. It would have to be one that went through capital repair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grant process.
Jeff Halpin.
I'd just like to say I second Bruce's opinion and Cindy's opinion on adding something to the formage that basically, you know, when we're heading into a power unit purchase, that it's a typical, you know, that unit, whether it be a VIN number, and then if there's any changes from that, we have to add that. So just maybe some kind of literature on there that just says, that states that, because I can see how clubs can say, hey, there's a better deal over here, you know, halfway through it. And so, especially when it comes down to money. That brings up my second question is, I'd like to ask a little bit more, if I could, about the pre-auth that was originally applied for. What was the reason that the club got away from the pre-auth and went to the Tucker? Was it just money? Was it that much of a money difference?
I'm going to let Travis speak on behalf of that, because he's been doing all the research and everything and talking with Orleans and talking with Track Inc. So I'm going to let him speak on that. Oh, maybe let me message him.
He's muted.
I think the price was the same.
Cindy, are you able to unmute Travis? I think he just doesn't
I can
know how.
ask to unmute. I'm asking. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Travis, are you there?
He's having problems with the speaker. It wasn't really a money issue. It was not, no one could give us the exact details of what had gone into the pre-auth, like what had been updated, what was wrong with it, what needed fixing. You know, we talked to Brian Ainsworth at pre-auth, and he said it had been through the shop and had like, I don't know, $27,000 worth of work done a few years ago, but there was like no one could give us exactly what was wrong, what it needed. And only being 13 years old, I guess I'm a little confused as to why they were trading it in the first place and got funding for another groomer.
Well, if I may ask, I mean, I would ask the same question with both units. I mean, I think I would have been curious about that with the Tucker also.
Mm-hmm.
That Tucker, if it was running and it didn't have the problems it had, would probably still be out on the trail. That's just, you know, Jesse has a really, the trail system that Jesse does is pretty nice. It's not real rugged. And so it was having problems even on what he does. So my question is why we got away from the pre-auth in the first place. And Matt, what do we have records on what the pre-auth had done to it? I mean, is that something we could have forwarded to them as far as the VAST funding side of it, or do we have anything, or was it just club funded?
They put in capital repairs for some of that work that was done on it. No one ever asked me for any records.
Okay.
I don't know what I have. I don't know if I even have any. I may not, but I was never asked. And I thought Brian Ainsworth had a lot of that stuff, but I don't know. I said, I wasn't deeply involved.
Brian's very easy to work with. He could have pulled any maintenance records that pre-auth had done to it. That's all for my questions, really. I just really feel like when we start heading into a certain unit, that needs to be focused on that unit. Money, trade-ins change, values change. Once anything like that, the two major, whether you have a trade and what you're buying, one of those two units changes, it changes everything. So I just feel like we need to make sure that when we head into a deal that we're sticking with that deal. And it's not saying we can't change, but there's processes to changing. We have to follow the processes. And as VAST, we might not have that written very well. And so this is a good learning point, and we should, make changes and move forward with that. As far as the grants go further on the Tucker, I would imagine if there's problems down the road and you have problems with it and Matt has a problem with funding, it's going to end up in our laps at this meeting anyways, on whether it should be funded or not, would be my guess. Okay, all set. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Roger.
So Travis called me a few weeks ago. We had a very, very long conversation about this. And it wasn't really until the end that he told me where the machine came from. And it just by happenstance, that's kind of when it came into the conversation. So I could certainly see the hesitancy of Matt on, his end to want to put more money into this machine specifically. Jesse has been very open about that. He runs his machines to the fullest potential, and he's probably a little bit harder on his machines than most, and he expects a lot out of his machines. And if he was sitting here in this meeting, I would still say that anyway. He's been very open about it. So I think there might be a little bit of difference of operation coming from between down there and up at Burke's. And I didn't really know which way to point Travis, other than to say that, really we need to rely on our clubs to make the right decisions for themselves. And I think that a lot of it comes down to, especially if they've got heavy equipment experience, going and doing an in-depth inspection of the machine before they, want to spend money on it. In addition, we had to do that. We just bought a used machine and we were there crawling underneath it. And, we know where it's been, and it needs some TLC, but to us, the affordable decision was to go with a used machine. And that's kind of what we ended up doing. I think that, I can understand Matt's hesitancy about about this machine specifically. I just want to remind everybody that there's been several machines in this statewide system. Specific, one that comes off the top of my mind is the piston bully that was up at Northeast Kingdom Snow Blasters for several years that we spent a lot of money on. Continuous VAST grants went into that, and they ended up getting a new machine, and that machine came to another Vermont club. And the repairs are not going to end on a machine that's old. That's that old. It doesn't matter what brand it is. If it's that old and it has that many hours on it, it's going to have repairs. So I don't necessarily have a specific opinion on the way that this should go, but I think that if we do move forward, I think it's important to make sure that the club knows that there is some liability that falls on them with this machine and the potential future repairs. And I certainly don't have any issue with Matt saying, hey, we'll help you fund this machine, but as far as capital repairs go, if something happens, and maybe put a set date on it. If something happens in the next couple of years, like, you're kind of on your own. I wish he would have done that with the piston bully up in Snow Blasters, but we poured a lot of money into that machine as well too. So, kudos to Matt for using his, for really thinking about this before making a decision. It's just a tough position because, these guys down in Burke have been doing a really good job with their trail system. And they seem to be very keen to repairs and heavy equipment and kind of knowing what to look for. And if you repair the right things, that machine will continue to go and go and go as long as the motor stays intact. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you, Roger. Matt?
I was just going to note on the piston bully that Roger's talking about, that there was no grant given on that for the other club in Vermont. And I did sit down with their president and I told them the same thing I said to Burke, because like VAST doesn't put any money into that machine. You're on your own, and good luck, because again, that one's tired too. And I agree, it really shouldn't be on our system. We're gonna have to put more money in it than it's worth. And that was the Snow Bees that I had that discussion with. And
thanks for the clarification on that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to note that, like, yeah, I did have that discussion with them, and they weren't happy with me either. Like, it was a tough, discussion, but I was like, it's not, they didn't qualify for two machines, and it didn't really make sense to me. But they seem happy, so I don't know. I could be wrong on it. So.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We'll take a look at policies and see what we can do to address some of these.
Sorry, what, I guess I missed it maybe, and I didn't hear the entirety of the letter. What's the disposition to this? Have they been denied the grant, or is it moving forward with contingencies? What's the
No, they
disposition on
received
this?
the grant, Roger. They were upset with the way Matt handled it, talking about capital repairs in the future. But they did
Okay,
receive.
so they got the money to purchase that machine. There's contingency put on it as far as anything that happens in the future.
Yeah, and we'll make policy changes. So if somebody changes mid-stride, they just need to at least come back and have a conversation with us, you
Yeah.
know, if they're going to change gears on, you know, what type of machine, like they'll have to amend the application, maybe not do a formal full one, but something to bring. So if something like this comes up again, Matt knows about it before they actually make a deposit on a machine that wasn't approved.
Because this doesn't, I mean, and that's a great idea. This doesn't always have to go into the, I'll call it the negative side. There could be clubs that find way better deals with way newer machines out there. So the process should be put in place for sure, but it shouldn't hinder, if there's timelines and crunches out there, it shouldn't make them ineligible for the funding.
Right.
Okay. Jacksonville Easy Riders. Matt.
So Jacksonville Easy Riders are looking for a guarantee for a loan through Northfield Savings Bank. I'm gonna find the email. I got a whole bunch open here. Bear with me. They are purchasing a 2023 Snow Rabbit to replace their old Piston Bully Scout, which, if anybody knows, the Scouts were never made to pull a drag. They were made to move men and equipment around like in a utility type way. So they've been grooming with it, and it has not been very favorable for them. Like I said, the frame and the chassis was just never really meant to pull a drag through the woods. So it's been rough. So they're looking for a $45,000 Northfield Savings Bank loan for 5 years. And VAST would guarantee that loan to them like we have in the past. I don't know if anybody wants more information. I have all kinds of other information too. They are receiving a VAST grant towards that piece of equipment as well. And they're putting money down out of the club treasury too. And they've got their trade as well of their Scout.
So I would entertain a motion to support the loan request or loan guarantee request of Jacksonville as Matt's detail.
Washington County will make a motion to accept the co-sign the loan with them.
Chittenden County would second.
Any questions or further discussion? I know
Yeah,
we've done this in the past.
does their grooming contract cover their loan amount?
I don't actually know what their payment is. I don't actually see that outlined here, what their payment is. She does outline that. I don't see it here. Yeah, I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Was it $45,000 for 5 years?
Yeah.
I've got to be about 10 grand a year, right?
Yeah, I mean, probably, yeah. Yeah. And their grooming contract is, let's see. Yeah, so their grooming guarantee is $5,253.50 a year.
And how many members do they have?
I knew you were going to ask that. Hang on a sec. Let me see if I can pull this up easily. Hold on, turn my camera off here for a sec. I was just in Salesforce. Let me see if I can pull up last year's. No, I don't have it.
Hey, Matt, what's the total cost of that thing new?
156,464.68.
Okay, so they're borrowing and they're borrowing 45,000.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the deal, Ivor? I mean,
I just want to make sure in worst case scenario that it's financially sustainable for them.
it's a no-brainer. They can afford it. Absolutely. We take it back. We can sell it.
We don't want to take it back.
We don't want to take it back, but I don't
Exactly, we don't want to take it back, but
There's $110,000 in equity.
We don't want to set them up to spend 15,000 when worst case scenario they have 10,000 in revenue.
I think my experience, if these clubs are asking for money, then they can afford it. I mean, it would be foolish for a club to ask for money from VAST to secure a loan if they can't afford it.
That would be foolish.
It would be downright dumb.
there may be a benefactor, behind the scenes that's willing to support the club. So, yeah, I mean, I think Mike's kind of on the right page that I
There
don't
we
think
go.
anybody,
Beth
I
just
don't-
put it in. They have 375. They sold 375 TMAs last year.
So they're in good shape.
Yeah.
so
Thanks, Beth. Oops.
there's $9,000 right there, so.
Exactly.
I think we're good.
Yeah, and while we don't want to put them in a position, I'm assuming that they've thought about it, like Mike said, but also we're starting off with $110,000 worth of equity. Maybe a little less
Right.
because of depreciation. It's $150,000 machine. They've already got $110,000 into it.
This is that rabbit. Is this the rabbit we're talking about too? Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
I got to tell you, down at the annual meeting, I was pretty impressed with that thing. I bet I feel like a lot of the clubs that are reaching out to Class 1, and that's what class does that fall under?
Class 2.
That's a pretty impressive little machine, and I think a lot of our clubs could probably go that way for cost. I mean, you're talking half the money. And I was, from what I saw and from what I read about the stats on it, it was pretty impressive.
I think you can do class 3 with them also. You can get them narrowed up enough for 6 foot.
We tested one a couple of years ago, and I was quite impressed with what it would do.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of supporting the motion to guarantee the loan for Jacksonville Easy Riders, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, I have a question in regards to the, still on the Burke rumor. Is Matt going to contact the club and have a discussion about a time period where they wouldn't honor repairs to a time period where they would honor repairs? I know that was kind of left open when we were talking about it.
I guess I would defer to Matt to answer that question.
Well, I mean, I will stand behind my email that I sent. I don't think VAST should put more money into that unit. We've already bought it. Literally, we have paid more than.
I mean, that's a big decision for the club, whether they're going to take a loan out, maybe even fold. I mean, so are you saying now 3 years from now, there's a major repair, you're not going to give them a time?
I'm not saying that, but it's definitely not going to be the highest priority when we've already put so much money into that machine. It's definitely, I don't see, it's not a good use of VAST money. It's just not.
Well, I know the club itself put almost $27,000 out of their own money into that machine before they even agreed to buy it, to make more necessary repairs on it. So saying that you're not going to give them any future money is wrong. I mean, we all know Jesse was pulling a drag that was too big for the machine. He was beat bottom line, he was giving it for all it was worth. So,
Kristen
you know,
Vaughn,
had
who
we
did it
had-
before him, wasn't pulling a 10-foot drag and was very meticulous with his equipment, and he had nothing but problems with it prior to Jesse owning
Yeah.
it. So that's where my history goes. It's not just Jesse; it was a problematic machine
right.
prior to him owning it. But
But what I'm saying is Burke put almost $27,000 out of their own money above the purchase price into that machine already. So to say 3 years from now, you're not going to give a nickel for the machine it's just absolutely wrong. When there's no policy written in the VAST thing that says we don't do that.
well, I didn't say I wouldn't give them anything. That's not what I said. I said it wouldn't be the highest priority out there when we've paid more than that machine in grants. VAST has paid, I think, $18,000 more than that machine sold for 8 years ago, which to me, it's just
I understand
like,
that.
that's tough from my perspective.
I understand that, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to read between the lines what's going to happen probably going down the road, you know, and I got to look out for the benefit of that club. I mean, they're right in the central part of Trail 114, and they control a lot of clubs in Caledonia County. If they just meet tomorrow and decide they're not going to have a club, then you got a problem.
Well,
And I
if
don't
they've
want
already
that
put
to happen.
27,000 in the machine, hopefully they're not going to decide tomorrow they aren't having a club. They just bought the machine. So
Okay.
I don't know what to say.
I think down the road that we'll take into consideration the circumstances around the request for additional money on that machine. I'm not sure that Matt is totally wrong in what he's saying, and I also don't see that we can, leave a club hanging in the breeze either. So we'll play it by ear. We'll look at a couple of the other suggestions tonight of starting a list of equipment and having some history on that equipment. I think that's an excellent idea. I think we can go back through a few years of financial analysis forms, repair grant requests and that sort of thing, and put some history together on some of these pieces of equipment. But just flat out denying at this point in time money for that machine, I think, is a little overboard. So we will, play it by ear, see what the circumstances are, and we'll hope for the best that there aren't major repairs on that piece of equipment for quite some time. All right, so we've got Jacksonville squared away. Policy change, policy and bylaws committee.
Yep.
Mark.
Quick question.
Jim, go ahead.
Is it possible that my snow trails could leapfrog policy because it's real quick?
Yes, absolutely. I know you got an early bedtime. So
After
let's
being in the hospital for a week, yeah. Anyways, the Snow Trails Conservancy has, we obviously lost Ken. He was our vice president and a trustee, and we'd like to, Cindy did step forward and would fill his position. The trustees at the Snow Trails, we did have a meeting last week and did elect her as a trustee, but it has to be approved by the board.
okay. So I will entertain a motion to have Cindy approved as a trustee for Vermont Snow Trails Conservancy. Someone would like to make that motion.
Grand Isle will make the motion to
And
accept Cindy as the trustee.
Lamoille will second.
okay. Any questions, further discussion? All
What
those in
does a
favor say aye.
trustee do?
What was that?
What was it? What does a trustee do?
So the Vermont Snow Trails Conservancy is an organization that VAST started years ago about helping landowners give easements for snowmobiling on property. So that's what we do. And I was the vice president before. I was a trustee. And then when Ken Brown started at VAST, well, it wasn't even when he started, about a year or two ago, we switched and moved him over to that. So it's just since he left employment, but that's what the Snow Trails Conservancy does.
Trustee is like a board of directors.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
They show up at a meeting occasionally and make their issues known.
Okay.
So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. And I can officially retire now from this.
Oh, no, you don't.
All right, Mark, back to you on the policy changes.
Cindy, can you let me share the screen? All right. So you guys reviewed this and it came back to the Policy and Bylaws Committee. We had some suggestions from Patty. We ran some of those by our attorney, and we looked back at our policy and we decided to keep it relatively simple. And besides the Policy and Bylaw Committee, we also reviewed this with the Executive Committee this last week. The major changes we made, and Patty made this suggestion. We wanted to make sure we defined what type of days were in the timeline, calendar days, and then also to make sure that the appellant gets notified by the board's decision. And we put that on the county director or alternate director. So other than that, it stays the same as what you reviewed in the previous meeting when you first reviewed it. So I have it shared on the screen. Are there any questions? Oh. Jim, you thought yours was quick. I guess, do we need a motion to approve it?
Yes, we do. Someone would care to make that motion?
Mr. Connie will make a motion to approve the bylaws changes as presented.
Appeals policy change.
Appeals policy. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mark.
And a second?
Chittenden County would second.
Thank you, Pat.
I think Wyndham was first. Ivor he doesn't speak very loud, but
okay.
Clearly.
I will take Wyndham over Chittenden.
Sure you will.
Any further questions or discussion?
I would just have to ask real quick if Patty's okay with all that. Patty, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I do think it's a long timeline potentially, but I think it's better than the current policy. So I think it's a positive move forward. Thank you for asking.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Patty. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the policy committee for working on this. That's Carol and Doug and Cindy.
All right. Trails administrators report and ED report. Anything that you two would like to add to your reports?
I just will add that I'm still in the process with the Small Business Administration. Matt's been helping me with that. Went on site visits to 4 bridge locations. So we're kind of hoping that the SBA turns us down, because I don't think you guys want to go in for a loan. But you have to go through this process in order to enter FEMA process. So we're going through that. This is for 2 bridges in Washington County and 2 bridges in Windsor County. So, and if anything, we're getting some experience. And the state, the governor's office has been very supportive in helping us go through this process and wanting us to go through it. So hopefully in the future, even for FEMA, that there'll be some availability for VAST.
Cindy, can you say what bridges those are?
There's the bridges in Washington County are the 2 suspension bridges. So the ones over the Winooski, and then the other 2 are in Plymouth, right, Matt?
Yeah, they're in Plymouth, right by Mike Lyons, Spike's place, right by his shop. They come out onto 100A. There was 2 bridges there that were fairly expensive. So
The total on the projects was, what was it, Matt?
I think it was
1.5.
1.5 million. I mean, it's a guess because we don't know what the Waterbury suspension bridge, who knows what that would cost to replace and engineer. Same with the bridge in East Montpelier, that suspension bridge. Again, it's probably a $300,000 to $500,000 bridge. Who knows? The ones in Plymouth, we knew a little bit better because they're steel I-beam bridges and pressure treated decking. So it's a little bit more known, those costs, but an estimate was, like 1.5, 1.7, somewhere in there.
For all 4?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the majority is with the suspension bridges, obviously. Okay.
Yeah, I think the one right across from Spike's place, I think was around $81,000 for that one, because they're pouring concrete footings and keying them in below the stream bed. So that's gonna, that's a $30,000 cost right there, because they're having to pump it across the river and everything. So it's gonna be a much more substantial bridge than it ever was, probably, to do it right.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Any other questions for Matt and Cindy on their reports? Okay, we'll slide into quickly doing some committee reports, and maybe we'll still be out of here by 8 o'clock. Mark, American Outdoor Risk Retention Group.
We had our annual meeting. We've passed our first year in good shape. Our finances look good. We passed our audit with flying colors. Our recommendation from our actuary was to lower our rate this year. We have decided not to, so that we can continue to build up cash reserves. So eventually we can reduce and then eventually hopefully remove the line of credit guarantee that VAST provides. Knock on wood, we've had a good year, a first year, and we look forward to a good second year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Stan,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stan.
I know there was some discussion early on about offering insurance to other organizations, whether they're snowmobile organizations or maybe other recreational organizations. What's the thought on moving forward with that?
We're still hesitant because we're so new at it. We really want to get a good grounding and knowledge of this before we offer it to anyone else. It's not being considered. We're just being really conservative and slow about how we approach it.
Right,
and I do, when I've been out in Congress and at other places, I have had growing interest in it. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but we're 1 year in, and I want to make sure that we do this well before we offer it to others.
Right. I mean, because this could become a a relatively good income stream, right? I mean, insurance companies.
I will say that I was pretty clear with this when we started, that income stream was further down on the list. First was control over our own destiny, making sure we had insurance, controlling the costs, and then possibly doing an income stream at some point. I've never wanted to promise that to anyone, and I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that that's lower down on the totem pole of my concerns. It is something that could happen as we get better at this and we make sure that this is on even firmer financial footing. It might be something we approach, but I just want to make sure that people know this was not started as a money-making thing for VAST. It was really a way to control our future and our insurance needs.
Yeah, I understand that, and I agree with that, but I also know insurance companies are usually pretty successful and pretty wealthy businesses. And when we talk about our shortcomings with equipment, this could be a way for us, and maybe 2-3 years down the road, but a way for us to generate income that could be used to help support our grooming equipment and our trails in general.
The other way to think of this too is it would also add a lot of risk, because when you're bringing in other states and other organizations that maybe don't do the same things that we do, that we are then accepting their risk, like if they're not signing the way that we sign or things like that. So I do think it will take some time, but you're right, we could make money, but we would definitely add to our risk.
Yeah, so I want it on public record that I say this is further down. So at some point, if someone says, you said this would be a moneymaker, I can say, no. I said it could at some point, but I understand what you're saying, Stan, and that's not out of our thought process. It's just that, again, we're being very careful and cautious moving forward.
Have we realized a savings over the cost of our insurance?
Actually, this year, the recommendation was to lower the premium by a couple of $1,000s. We decided not to, because like I said, we wanted that extra cash to keep going in and building up the reserves.
Yeah, okay. I mean, because our insurance was what, 260,000 the last year that we
received approximately 240,000 from SSTP, and we're doing the same again this year.
Okay.
Northeast chapter, anything, USA? You're on mute. Pat?
USA did not meet this past month, and I did not hear anything from the chapter, so.
Chapter wise, we're looking at early February for a winter meeting ride. Probably going to be in the Malone, New York area. New York is going to host. They're having to work with, they're trying to work out trail pass information right now for everybody. So I will keep you posted on that. And I think that's it. I saw Jeff Miller over the weekend, who was USA president, and he didn't have much to say. So we're good on that. Vermont Trails, Snow Trails Conservancy, I think we handled all that. I think Jim is, I don't know if Jim's still on or not.
He's done. Yeah, we had a meeting last night.
Okay.
We have some stuff we're working on, but
Okay.
nothing to report out this month.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Law enforcement, Cindy?
We had a law enforcement orientation meeting. That went really well. I have some follow-up to do with that. We're just about to get contracts out. The committee's been discussing contracts and rates of pay and things like that. But other than that, there's interest from a new police department. Just got an email yesterday from the Berlin police, so inviting them to come over and meet with me, or Matt and I at the VAST office to discuss what they would want to do and how they could help. That's it.
Sounds good. Thank you. Awards and nominating, Patty. Anything?
Yeah, just quickly, congratulations again to everybody and the individuals and the clubs. And just want to remind folks that took awards on behalf of people who were not present to make sure those photos are sent to Beth of the person holding the award so she can use that with the speech in the magazine. So just as a reminder, if you took an award, I'll just let your county clubs know. Please send a photo to Beth. That's it.
Thank you. Bylaws and policy. Mark, anything other than what we handled tonight?
That's what we handled tonight. It sounds like we have a direction to look at some policy for equipment grants and notification in terms of what we talked about earlier tonight in terms of changing machines after you've applied for a grant.
Okay, thank you. Annual meeting. Mr. Garber, are you still on?
I don't think he is on.
How about Amber Stevens?
Yeah.
Her better half.
She's got a few things a few locations that she's looking into. So we'll keep you updated on it.
I have a spreadsheet that will really help you check off stuff, and we should probably get together to meet at some point to talk about, so we can just sort of here's the spreadsheet, here's what we did, just give you a little bit of a boost going forward. So let me know when you guys want to get together and go over that and do that.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, I'll get a hold of you.
All right.
Thanks.
Executive committee, we had a quick meeting last Wednesday. Just kind of went over tonight's agenda. Cindy had spent some time with Ruth, getting Ruth up to speed as our new secretary, and just kind of a rough outline of what we were expecting tonight, and we missed a few things and hit a few things. And anything else you'd like to add to that, Cindy? Okay, thank you. Long range planning, Mark.
Not because it's been bylaws and policy centric and annual meeting centric for me before that. Mike Burns, one of my members, emailed me and asked me about meeting. I don't have anything planned, but we probably should get together at some point to toss around what we want to focus on next. I'll send out when Jeff does the new committee list, I'll send out an email to the members and see when you can get together so that we can do that.
And that list will be going out here within the next week or so, probably. I'm waiting to hear back from one person. Resource committee, not active. Personnel, Julianne, anything?
No.
Okay, thank you. Trails. There's been some question about whether we're going to have a meeting anytime soon. Trails is one of the committees that I'm kind of waiting on someone for. I think we should probably have a meeting, Matt, maybe November, just to kind of see where everybody's sitting and how we're at with trail repairs and that sort of thing. Does that make sense? Or
I'm not the chair. I don't know.
Well, I'm not either, but
I know.
November is deer season.
Is there a reason that we don't have very many trails committee meetings? Like, aren't the trails the most important thing of our system?
I'll be really honest, and probably people aren't going to like this. Our trails committee is dysfunctional. Sorry. It's the way I feel. It's a waste of time, and we go round and round and we don't get anything accomplished. So it's very, I don't know. That's sorry. It was really blunt, but
Yeah,
I'd have to agree. I have to agree with Matt a little bit on that. I think we put a lot of good time and chat into making all we spent a lot of meetings, a lot of times, subcommittees working last year on the groomer changes and the prices and rates, rate per mile. And I think there's a lot of good that comes out of it. I can say that I think we got more out of the subcommittee because there was less people and we focused. But what that allowed us also to do is take the information that we got from the trail committee, take the pinpoint issues, and then take those and focus on them. So I still say it's a lot of good to be done there, a lot of good ideas. Those are the gentlemen that that are out there that see the trails, that see the projects, that see the problems. And so it could use a little sharpening up.
Yeah, and that's kind of the intent of trying to revamp that a little bit.
I also think, Jeff, I think it's important for the county trails coordinators to have that camaraderie amongst pairs and know what's going on. So,
yeah.
I mean, I know the directors here, but I think it helps them.
We have been talking. No, I'm sorry, Patty. We've been talking about this for years, this committee, and it is dysfunctional. And what it really, so Jeff and I and Matt and I have been talking about leadership. On the committee, we've also talked about subcommittees, maybe vetting some stuff to help the general big committee to move forward. But it's, Dustin, you're right. It is the most important thing. And it's really hard because it's not Matt's job to call trail committee meetings, and so that's something Jeff and I last week we had a meeting. We're working on committee assignments together, and that is something that we are discussing. So there is some news coming fairly soon about this, and our hope is to get this committee on track, and just like all the other committees at VAST. And it is hard. It is a very hard committee to manage because you do have one person from each county. It's the only time that they ever get together. It's not like board of directors where you guys are one person from each county, but you're meeting every month. So it's frustrating, but it's also fixable. And we just need to buckle down and get it fixed for once and for all, this committee. And but it's a hard one to manage. And so it really needs somebody that's strong and can manage it. That's all I'm going to say.
You, Cindy. Yeah, so there will be some news on that coming out here shortly. But yeah, so I would like to have a meeting sometime before season starts. We'll see if we can get that arranged. Safety, Stan.
Yeah, we met last month, have a meeting scheduled again for the coming month. And, we want to promote the programs we have in place. We're going to focus on our e-news and short articles in the VAST magazine. I think we're just being a little bit conscious of the budget and not spending a bunch of money. We had talked about doing some videos last year. We need snow to do them, and we were planning on trying to do it with some professional photography, but I think the discussion was that we can probably do a pretty good job, even with a cell phone doing the video. And we thought we'd dress Roger up and put him out there for some of those videos. So that's kind of our focus now. We're kind of getting some new traction going, and we'll meet again in a couple of weeks.
Roger didn't seem too keen on that dress up idea.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll pretty him up.
He's already dressed up like as a fireman right now.
Does that mean I have to shave the mustache?
Oh God, no.
No, you look like Sasquatch.
Look like your brother Dieter. Governor's Council.
Governor's Council did meet. The minutes were in the packet. Nothing major other than As Cindy said, we had the law enforcement meeting previous to the governor's council meeting, so most of the law enforcement partners were there, which is not always the case. I don't think there's anything in here that you haven't already heard. If there's any questions on the minutes, I can answer them, but Cindy,
I'd
is
like
there
to,
anything we should talk about?
I would just like to reach out to the counties in the southern part of the state. And as I'm representing Southern Vermont now on the Governor's Council, if anybody has anything that they need me to bring to the council, please reach out to me. I've sent some emails to a couple of the directors, but I hadn't heard anything back. But if you do have anything, please, the clubs or county directors, reach out to me. The meetings are the first Wednesday of every month. So if you think, you put it on your calendar and your phone to remind you that if something needs attention, send it to me the last week of the month and I will bring it to the council.
Thanks,
I
Stan.
have nothing to add, Pat.
Thank you, Cindy. Is there anything else that anyone would like to address?
How are the trade shows?
Trade shows are actually doing pretty well. This weekend we were in Maine. I guess much like here, it rained most of the weekend, so that was good for show attendance. It didn't make for great packing up yesterday afternoon, but that's okay.
Well,
But
you
yeah,
had a shorter walk than you did in New Hampshire, though, Jeff.
what was that?
You had a shorter walk to the truck than you did in New Hampshire.
Yes, I did. Yes, but it was a whole lot wetter. But New York was okay. New York usually is a good show, but out there, the weather that weekend was, like 85 degrees, that week, and that Saturday was actually pretty good. So that, I think, cuts into that sort of attendance on there. New
Syracuse had a
Hampshire
home
was.
game.
What's that?
Syracuse had a home game.
Yes, Syracuse had a home game as well. Yes. And the grass drags, it rained on Saturday, so that was kind of a dampening, no pun intended, effect on that. And that forecast for that weekend was bad, so we didn't see, I don't think we saw a lot of the Canadian turnout that we usually see. But we still had good traffic through the tent as it was raining. So, and we do Massachusetts. The second weekend of November, the 17th, 18th, I think is that one. So we're looking forward to that one. But the main show was capacity as far as vendors go, which is the first time since before COVID. I mean, we've been doing that show since 2017, 2018, I think. And it was packed. It was good. So, yeah, shows have been good. And I think it's definitely worth our investment. So.
Well, I will say we've, especially in New Hampshire, we talked to a lot of our own members. We talked to members even up in Maine. And being able to tell them stories about the trails opening back up. And, I can point to the Twinfield Club in my county of getting all 13 of their bridges done that were washed out. That's important to get out there. I think letting people know, because I had a lot of people, even people who weren't going to snowmobile in Vermont, ask me about the state of the trails after the floods, because, that made national news. So I think this has been a good year for being out there.
Yeah, and the fact that both New Hampshire and Maine have raised their rates recently or this year, we're not all that far away anymore from what some of these other states are. And a lot of the comments I was hearing over the weekend in Maine was that their trail pass is too cheap, or their registration is too cheap. This is coming from club members and club directors that think that they're giving away their product. So, so anything else? Any questions?
Jeff, I just wanted to bring up the fact that you and I and Pat and Jim and Cindy and Carol were down at the memorial service for Betty Rourke down at the Woodford Groomer Barn. It's important to remember these foundational, really rock solid early members of VAST. I didn't realize that the Woodford Club didn't start until 1984. The turnout and the way people spoke about her and Norm really showed what type of people they were. And I think it was really appreciated that VAST had a presence down there. And I'm glad I went. So I just wanted to let people know that, it was good to be down there.
Yes, thank you, Mark. That was definitely a must do, I think. Very, very integral part of the Woodford Club down there, for sure. Anything else? Little note from Mr. Kohler. Thanks to everyone who spent their time at the trade shows. They take a lot of time away from home. Yeah, a little bit here and there. But it's something I enjoy doing. I think it's something that I think our members enjoy seeing us out there. Give them a chance to chat with us. So if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to say goodbye. Or adjourn.
Washington County will make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jeff. And a second?
Anyone? I'll second it.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone, for spending 2 hours on the call tonight. We'll try to do better next month.
Thanks, everybody, for all you do. Have a good